They called it the Forbidden Line. No map showed it, no beacon marked it, but every pilot, every traveler in the galaxy, knew exactly where human space began. For 100 years, it stayed untouched, silent, empty, and feared. Stories whispered through the stars, always ending the same way. Ships that crossed never came back. But Captain Varn didn't believe in ghost stories. He was a Threxian explorer, proud and his ship, the Wavelength, was small, sleek, and filled with the best minds of his people. For years they had studied the borders of human space. No signals, no movement, no sign of war, defense, or life. So why were all the other species still? Afraid Varn had a theory. Maybe humans had vanished long ago. Maybe the fear was just legend, passed down and grown larger with time. He believed the truth was waiting just beyond that invisible line, and he wanted to be the one who found it. "We're ready," said First Officer Kylo. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled. "Engage forward thrusters, 1/4 speed," Varn said. His tone was steady, unshaken. As the ship moved closer to the edge, the stars outside the windows seemed to flicker. Not dim, just strange. The crew sat in silence, watching as their sensors ticked closer and closer to the coordinates known across the galaxy as the line. "We are now crossing into human space," the ship's AI announced. Nothing happened. No shockwave, no alarms, no weapons, just silence. Kylo let out a nervous laugh. "So far, so good," Varn smiled, but he didn't relax. "Run a full scan. Check for anything radiation, tech, debris." They waited. "Nothing," said the science officer. "Just empty space." The crew exchanged glances. Some looked relieved, others were disappointed. But then something odd happened. The ship's lights dimmed for half a second. Not off, lower, like a deep breath being held. "What was that?" Varn asked. "Could be a power fluctuation. Check it anyway." The engineer tapped through the controls. "All systems show normal. Nothing wrong on our end." But the feeling wouldn't go away. It was subtle, like the air had thickened, like the ship itself was being watched. "I'm picking up something," the science officer whispered. "It's not a signal, not a ship, just presence." Varn turned toward the screen. "Clarify." "I don't know how. There's nothing out there, but the sensors say we're not alone." The crew went quiet again. Deep quiet, the kind that made your skin feel tight. Then, the AI spoke again. "Warning, external scan detected. Source unknown." Varn stood. "We're being scanned." "Yes, Captain, but not by technology we recognize. It's like something is reading us from every angle, even thoughts, even dreams." A cold silence fell over the bridge. "Should we leave?" Kylo asked softly. "No," Varn replied. "Not yet." He looked at the main screen. The stars seemed a little too still. The darkness beyond the windows felt thicker than it should. The science officer's voice cracked. "Sir, there's a shape behind us." Varn turned fast. The back cameras showed only space. "No ship, no signal," said the officer. "But it's there, like a shadow. Like something is copying our shape, only not exactly." "Can we record it?" "I'm trying, but the feed keeps changing." The shadow on the screen twisted, then blinked out. When it came back, it looked more like the Wavelength than before. The same shape, but stretched. As if someone who had never seen a ship before was trying to draw one from memory. The crew froze. No one spoke. Then the lights flickered again. "And, again, something's boarding," said Kylo, eyes wide. "Impossible. There's no breach." But footsteps echoed through the hallway outside the bridge. Slow, soft, not metal, not boots. Bare. Everyone turned toward the door. The AI whispered, "Life form detected on board. No match found." Varn moved to the command console. His hand hovered over the ship's defense protocol. "Don't fire," he said. "We don't even know what it is." A message appeared on the main screen. 6 words. "You crossed the line." Why? No one typed it. No signal sent it. No one on the ship had moved. The words just appeared, and then the door to the bridge hissed open slowly. But nothing stood there. Only air. Only silence. But every crew member felt that something was there, waiting, watching. And for the first time, Captain Varn, the proud explorer, felt a whisper of fear. They had crossed the line. And now, they weren't sure if they could ever go back. No one slept that night. The crew of the Wavelength remained tense after what had happened on the bridge. The strange message, those 6 silent words, still blinked in their minds. "You crossed the line." Why? Toned, though the door had opened by itself, and nothing visible had entered. Everyone could feel a presence. Heavy, quiet, close. Captain Varn ordered a full system check. Every deck, every control, but there was no sign of a breach. No proof that anything had entered the ship. Still, the air felt colder in the halls. Lights flickered once every few minutes. Footsteps echoed, but always behind you, never in front. "It's like something invisible is moving through the walls," whispered Kylo as she walked beside the captain toward the engine room. "We're not alone, even now." The crew gathered on the bridge. The next cycle, tired, pale, unsettled. The science officer stared at her monitor. "There's a signal," she said softly. Varn turned sharply. "From where?" "I don't know. It's not coming to us. It's inside us." "Inside?" the ship, maybe even inside our systems. Play it, he ordered. A low, humming sound filled the room. Deep, soft, but it didn't seem threatening. It almost sounded like a melody off-key, strange, but somehow familiar. Kylo frowned. That's a human voice. The AI responded, confirmed. Signal contains audio frequencies matching ancient Earth languages. The humming continued, and then, words.simple.com/whispered. You were warned. You crossed anyway. Why? No one replied. Suddenly the navigation screen lit up. Star. Charts changed. The map of their location now showed small red marks, dots forming a line behind them. 1 dot for each second since they crossed the boundary. Are those ... tracking points? Kylo asked. They're counting us. Varn said, counting how long we've been inside. One of the engineers ran onto the bridge, panic in his eyes. The lower decks are changing. What do you mean? I mean the walls, the metal, the lights. They're not the same as before. It's like the ship is reshaping. They all rushed to see. The lower corridors were dimmer, longer. The walls had a smooth, silvery surface different from the Threxian steel used during construction. Some areas had strange markings etched into them, curved, alien, not from any known language. Varn touched one of the symbols. It felt warm, alive. He pulled his hand back quickly. Is this human tech? Kylo asked. No, Varn replied slowly. It's something else. The ship's AI spoke again. Ship integrity is stable. However, architecture no longer matches blueprint. The crew looked at each other. Their own ship was changing shape. And then came the worst part. One of the crew members was missing. Dren, a young systems analyst, last seen walking toward the observatory deck. He never returned. Varn replayed the footage. It showed Dren entering the corridor. Normal. But halfway down the hallway, he stopped, turned his head slightly, as if hearing a whisper. Then the lights blinked off. When they came back on, Dren was gone. Not ran, not attacked. Just not there. Varn ordered a search. Every room, every wall panel, every storage bay. Nothing. Dren's ID badge was later found in the engine room, but not where someone would drop it. It was perfectly placed, centered on the console, as if someone or something was showing them a message. I don't think this place wants us to leave, whispered the science officer. And I don't think Dren is gone. I think he's still here, just not how we remember. Captain Varn called for silence. We came seeking truth, he said, voice steady. We ignored the warnings. Now we're inside a place that's more than space. It's a boundary between what we know and what we were never meant to understand. He looked out the window. The stars beyond didn't look right anymore. They pulsed slowly, as if breathing, and something in the darkness moved to large. Too quiet and too smooth to be anything known. No alarms, no threats, no sounds. Just a question, whispered again through the signal. Why did you come? The crew had no answer. They had crossed the line. Now they were being studied, watched, measured, and something deep within this silent space was slowly, carefully deciding what to do with them. Dren was still missing. 3 full cycles had passed, and no sign of him had appeared, not in the data, not in the corridors, and not in the scans. Yet, somehow, the crew felt he was nearby. Some even claimed they could hear footsteps when alone. Others swore they heard faint whispers calling their names in his voice. Captain Varn remained calm on the surface. But inside, questions were growing, louder. What was this space they had entered? Why had the ship changed? And most important, was it already too late to go back? Then something unexpected happened. The science officer picked up a strange object floating outside the ship's dark, barely visible against the backdrop of space. It wasn't moving like debris. It was still, like it had been waiting. Permission to bring it aboard, she asked. Varn hesitated, but curiosity, dangerous and tempting one again. Bring it in, but seal the lab. No contact until we know what it is. The object was brought into a containment room. It looked like a black sphere, smooth and cold, without any markings. But when light hit it, strange reflections danced across its surface, reflections that didn't match the room. At certain angles, they showed faces, aliens, ships, symbols, and then something impossible. They saw their own ship. The wavelength floating silently in a dark void, but something was different. The reflections showed the ship as broken, empty, abandoned. Are we looking at the future? Kylo whispered. I don't know, Varn replied. Maybe we're seeing what this object wants us to see. They ran a scan on the object. No results. No energy signature. No known material. It's like it's not really here, the engineer said. More like a shadow of something. That night, another strange event occurred. The recording logs showed a new file. It wasn't from the crew, and it wasn't from the ship's systems. They played it. A voice spoke, calm, neutral, but clearly human. You passed through the gate without understanding the cost. This place is not for you. It does not forget. It does not forgive. It remembers everything. Then the screen showed images, faded, broken footage of ships. Dozens. Some from species the crew didn't recognize. All of them drifting, damaged, lost. And one thing they all had in common. They had entered this space and never returned. The crew sat in silence. Then came the biggest shock. One of the ships in the footage, was marked with a symbol from the wavelength, but it wasn't theirs. They had never seen that design before. Kylo zoomed in. Wait, that's us. That's our future ship. But how can that be? Someone asked. We haven't built that model. We've never seen it. Varn leaned forward. Unless we're not the first version of us to come here. The idea shook them. Could time be looping? Could this space be repeating explorers' journeys again and again? Or were scoping them? That question led them to examine the wavelength itself, and what they found made no sense. In the engine bay, they discovered a maintenance panel that none of them remembered installing. Inside it were wires, tools, and markings in an unknown language. This isn't Threxian, said the engineer, and this tech, it's older than our own by centuries. Someone had been inside the ship before them, or maybe someone had been inside versions of the ship they hadn't yet become. As they explored deeper, they found one more mystery. Hidden behind a false wall in the cargo bay was a small, sealed container. Inside it, dust, but not ordinary dust. When scanned, the dust responded like it had memory, like it remembered where it came from. It formed patterns. Those patterns matched Threxian DNA. It's from one of us, whispered Kylo, but no one's ever opened this wall before. This room didn't even exist on the ship's original blueprint. The crew backed away slowly. Their ship had been changed, rearranged, rewritten. Varn stood in the middle of the bridge, silent, deep in thought. Maybe we were never supposed to find humans, he said. Maybe they didn't vanish. Maybe they evolved into something that doesn't need ships, or space, or even bodies anymore. The stars outside began to dim, one by one, like candles being blown out. Sensors failed again. Only one thing still worked: the message from the sphere. It began to repeat in a loop. You crossed the gate. You were warned. You are being remembered. And then, just for a second, the ship's AI spoke in Drine's voice. I'm still here. Every crew member froze. The bridge lights flickered, and in the reflection of the window briefly, almost too fast to see, a face appeared. It wasn't Xian. It wasn't alien. It looked human, but not like the ones in history records. Its eyes were silver. Its skin shimmered like stars, and it smiled softly, without words, as if saying, now you see. Then it vanished, leaving only questions and silence. The stars outside weren't stars anymore. Captain Varn stood at the main window, staring into space. The familiar lights of nearby systems had faded, replaced by a strange glow-like fog moving between galaxies. Even the ship's internal clock had slowed. Time was bending, or perhaps losing meaning altogether, and still, no sign of Dren. Message had come in his voice. I'm still here. But was it really him? Or was this place using their memories, rebuilding their thoughts to make them doubt? Kylo sat quietly, watching the bridge screen loop the same phrase from the dark sphere. You crossed the gate. You are being remembered. The words haunted her. What did being remembered mean? Was it warning them, or describing what was already happening? Then, something new happened. The ship picked up a signal, faint but real. It came from just 0.3 light units away. The coordinates showed a floating vessel. It's not moving, said the science officer. Looks abandoned. Varn narrowed his eyes. Another lost ship, maybe, but this one's still active barely. Power is weak, but present. They moved closer. As the wavelength approached, the outline of the drifting ship became clearer. It was alien, but not human. Sleek, with a design unknown to their records. Run species match, Varn ordered. The AI processed quickly. Partial match Valari, lost 72 years ago. No records since crossing human space boundary. Kylo blinked. Valari? That ship disappeared before we were born. Varn stared at the dark vessel. Open a channel. No response. Send boarding drones, he said. We go in silent. Careful. Full scan. No direct contact. The drones launched. As they entered the derelict ship, the feed streamed back eerie images. Dark halls. Floating objects. Glowing walls covered in unfamiliar patterns. But there were no bodies. No signs of conflict. It looked untouched. And yet, it felt wrong. Where's the crew? Kylo whispered. Gone, someone answered. But not gone in a normal way. In the ship's central control room, the drones found messages scratched into the wall's shaky, rushed writing. They were not words of warning. They were questions. Did we speak wrongly? Was our silence not enough? Will they let us leave now? Each question grew more desperate. The final message, written in symbols that barely resembled language, was clear only because it repeated one phrase. We wanted to understand. The crew of the wavelength sat in silence. Then, the feed from the drones cut off instantly, without static, without error. Just gone. The bridge lights dimmed again, and a low hum vibrated through the floor, not from their ship, but from the derelict. The other ship just powered up, said the engineer. On its own, suddenly, the Valari vessel rotated, not randomly. It turned to face the wavelength directly, but its engines were still off. There was no signal, no communication, just movement. Then, from deep inside their own ship, a noise began, gentle, like soft tapping. From the walls, from under the floors, tap, 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 tap. Chilo stood. That's not mechanical, the AI added quietly. Unidentified internal vibrations. Origin? Unknown. Varn acted quickly. Shut off all external signals. Dim lights. Lock internal doors. Everything fell quiet again, but just before the silence completed, a soft tone played across the bridge. Not from the AI, not from the external source. It was music. Human music. Ancient, simpler lullaby. It played for less than 30 seconds, but every crew member felt something while it played. Not fear.memory.images passed through their minds. Planets, old homes, familiar smells they hadn't thought about in years. Then it ended. Varn leaned forward, voice low. They're not trying to scare us. They're trying to show us something, Kylo whispered, or test us. The science officer checked the scans again. Captain, the Valari ship. It's gone. What do you mean gone? I mean, it's not on the sensors anymore. It didn't jump. It didn't fly. It just vanished. Like dust and water. Everyone froze. Varn stood again. We're not in regular space anymore. This place isn't just hiding things. It's changing. Then he looked around at his crew, some shaking. Others wide-eyed and silent. He had to say something. Something to pull them back from the edge. We entered this place out of curiosity. And now it's looking back at us, testing us, maybe warning us. But we're still here, and as long as we're here, we try to understand. Suddenly, the ship's lights changed, gently shifting into a pale blue glow. Then, across the main screen, new coordinates appeared, not input by the crew, not from the AI. They pointed to a location, deeper inside human space. Varn stared at them. The crew waited. We follow, he said softly, but not because we're chasing answers anymore. Kylo looked at him. Then why? Because I think they want us to see something. And with that, the wavelength turned slowly and moved deeper, into the strange space beyond the stars toward something ancient, quiet, and watching. Asterisk, the new coordinates were not on any known star chart, no system, no planet, not even a distant asteroid field had ever been marked in this sector. Yet the numbers glowed clearly across the screen, silently urging the wavelength forward. Crew felt torn. Part of them wanted to turn back, to find a way home before it was too late, but the rest, driven by curiosity, or something deeper, wanted to see what waited at those strange coordinates. Captain Varn gave the order. Proceed at half speed. Stay alert. Record everything. As the ship moved through the of human space, the stars around them continued to change. They no longer twinkled like familiar suns. Instead, they pulsed slowly, like they were alive, like they were watching. Then the scans picked up something. A structure. Massive. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a station. It was larger than any object they had ever seen, floating in space, silent, ancient, and unlike anything in known galactic history. Shaped like a spiral with many arms. It looked like a broken flower drifting forever, and the dark its surface reflected no light, yet glowed from within with a soft, golden hue. Around it, pieces of what once might have been ships, satellites, or probes floated in perfect formation. Not wreckage, more like offerings. Are we recording? Varn asked. Yes, the science officer replied. Every angle, every sound. Even the energy readings. It's not regular matter. It's something else. The engineer studied the data. Wide-eyed, Captain, this structure is producing time echoes, meaning, it's not just here in space, it's here in time. It exists in multiple timelines at once, past, present, and something that hasn't happened yet. Varn leaned closer to the screen. Then we're not just looking at something old, we're looking at something that remembers. The crew stared at the impossible spiral as the wavelength moved closer, and then without warning, the ship stopped. Engines hadn't failed. There was no external force holding them, but every system said the same thing. Velocity 0. The AI gave a quiet message. Ship halted. Manual override not available. A calm silence settled across the bridge. Until the spiral began to move, it didn't spin like a machine. It unfolded slowly, gently, like a flower waking at dawn. Its arms drifted open, and from its center came a thin beam of light, reaching outward, directly toward them. No energy detected, the AI said. But this light is reading us. Varn stood. Prepare all logs. Visual, audio, memory, all of it. Whatever happens next, we need to understand it. As the light touched the wavelength, everything around the crew shifted. Not physically but mentally. They remained in their seats, in their bodies. But suddenly, they were somewhere else. In their minds, they saw visions not of war or fear, but of history. The humans. Not gone. Not destroyed. Changed. The visions showed Earth in its final days, beautiful, green, and growing. Then quiet. Humanity didn't die. They left. They stepped into another layer of existence, one not bound by planets, engines, or language. They became something else. Something that watched the galaxy from a place beyond space and time. They didn't abandon the stars. They became part of them. The spiral. There was not a warning that it was a memory container. A message from the ones who had once been human. And then another vision. Aliens, like the Threxians, arriving too soon. Rushing into this space, unprepared. The spiral did not harm them. It simply showed them what they were not ready to see. And they store faded. The message was clear now. This space wasn't dangerous, it was honest. It only showed the truth, and most couldn't accept it. The vision faded. The light beam vanished. Suddenly the wavelength moved again. Systems back. Online. Engines responsive. The ship was free, but the spiral remained behind, floating in silence, its arms gently folding again as if it had said what it needed to say. On the bridge, the crew sat quietly, trying to process what they had seen. Some wept silently. Others simply stared. Chilo broke the silence. Captain, what do we do now? Varn's voice was calm. We leave, slowly, with respect. But what do we tell the others? Someone asked. The council? The academy? What can we even explain? Varn turned to the main screen. The spiral was now distant, quiet. Tell them we didn't find power, we didn't find weapons. We found memory and understanding. He thought, looked at his crew, and maybe that's more important than anything else. But just as the wavelength turned to leave, a final message appeared across the screen. 8 simple words. This place changes you. Some never return whole. The crew didn't speak. No one needed to. They now understood. What they had crossed into was not a trap. It was a mirror. A place where explorers faced not enemies but themselves. And some discoveries changed you forever. Asterisk, they had seen what could not be explained now. The silence inside the wavelength was heavier than ever. Before, not from fear, but from deep, unspoken realization. The crew no longer looked at each other the same way. Something in their eyes had changed, as if a part of them had stayed behind inside the spiral structure. Or maybe never belonged outside it at all. Still, they were alive. Still, they had the choice to return. Captain Varn sat quietly in his command chair, hands resting gently on the arms, staring at the stars or what looked like stars. They no longer sparkled. They moved like thoughts, patterns, memory fragments, drifting in a sea of knowing. They had crossed a line no species ever returned from. But this time, something was different. The ship received a message. No transmission, no frequency, just words written across every screen at once. Gently glowing, almost warm. You may go. No threat, no force, no pressure, just permission. It was the first clear sign that something or someone had watched them the entire time, had tested them, had waited to see if they would break, and now, they had passed. Or had they? The engines powered on without command. The navigation system adjusted the route lead back toward the edge of human space, toward home. We're being guided, Kylo whispered, but no one protested. The ship moved, slowly and steadily. As they traveled, the changes became more noticeable. The stars outside grew brighter again. The sensors returned to full function. The ship's systems no longer flickered. Even the halls felt warmer, but the strangest change was within the crew. Their thoughts were sharper, their memories clearer. They spoke less, but understood more. They didn't need to explain what they had seen. It lived in them now. The ape, which had remained mostly silent throughout their journey, now spoke with a calmer voice, approaching re-entry coordinates. And yet, no one smiled, because when they looked at each other, they sensed something else had returned with them. A presence. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't harmful, but it was there. They were not the same crew that had entered human space. That crew was gone, changed, and though they looked the same, something within each of them pulsed with a quiet energy, like a second heartbeat, like they had been rewired, gently, from within. As they reached the edge of human space, something strange happened. A second ship appeared on the screen. Same size, same shape, same name, another wavelength. What are we looking at? Kylo asked, her voice low. The image drifted closer. It was them, but frozen. Unmoving. Eyes open, but lifeless. It looked like the same crew, the same faces, the same vessel. Echo, said the AI, not real, memory projection. And just like that, the second ship faded, like mist in sunlight. It had been left behind, a reminder, a question. What if they had not chosen understanding? What if they had pushed too far? No one spoke of it again. Hours later, the wavelength finally crossed back into mapped space. The stars felt warmer, familiar. The galaxy, busy and full of life, returned to their sensors, and yet, the ship remained untouched. By time, no delay, no aging. As if no time had passed at all, but it had. Varn activated the comms. This is Captain Varn of the Threxian vessel Wavelength. We are returning from human space. We carry records, data, and understanding. A long pause. The council responded. Captain Varn. Repeat, did you say human space? Yes, we crossed the boundary. We were permitted to return. The voice on the other end sounded shocked. No one has ever come back. What did you find? Varn paused, then said slowly, we didn't find humans, we found what they became. And now we understand why no one returns. But you did, the voice replied. Varn looked at his crew silent still, watching the stars. He answered simply, yes, but we're not who we were. The communication ended. The crew gathered in the main hall. Chilo spoke first. What do we tell them? Varn replied, the truth, but not all of it. Some things must be felt, not explained. The crew nodded. Later, the ship's logs were reviewed. Recordings were shared. but none of the footage showed the spiral. None of the messages appeared. Even Drain's voice was gone from the logs. It was as if that part of their journey had existed only in their minds or in their memories. The galaxy soon heard rumors, whispers of the crew that crossed into human space and returned. People called them changed. Some called them chosen, others feared them, but no one dared follow. The spiral waited, still deep in the void, patient, ancient. And from time to time, it sent new coordinates. Not often. Only when another species came close to forgetting what curiosity truly meant. And as for Captain Varn and his crew, they kept flying, not to explore, but to listen, because sometimes the stars whispered. And now they could finally understand.